Well, good afternoon. My name is Denise Dupree. I'm a political activist, and today we want to discuss issues going on within the Baton Rouge community as well as the state of Louisiana when it comes to policy, law, and just basically progressive changes that we're trying to see implemented and put in for the October 22nd election.
And hi, my name is Denise Morgan, and ditto. She pretty much said it all. But one of the questions I want to ask you, Denise, and it's Denise and Vanice, if that confused you a little bit. Denise, did you know that not too long ago Michelle Bachmann had made a statement to CNN, and she had pretty much said that black children today were actually better off in slavery? What do you think about that issue?
Well, I think that first off, it's a very unfactual issue, and then on top of that, it's really almost sad that it's been able to come across the media to where she feels that saying something like this is appropriate. Her saying the statement, she pretty much was so-called, I guess, informing her voters of her opinion that she felt like the Obama administration was actually hurting black voters more so than it did back during the times of slavery. I don't know who made Michelle Bachmann the spokesperson for black people. However, one thing about it that we really have to take into account is that it shows the lack of accountability these people in power are holding. By her being able to say that and get away with it, it almost just shows as well, you know, black people don't care. No one's going to say anything against me. They're not really voting anyway. So I can say what I want to at my free will and not be held accountable.
That's an interesting point. The point that she might have tried to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that because the average black youth does not grow up in a double parent household, when back in slavery, the black youth had a mother and a father, and it was more of a structural a family gathering. So do you think that she was right by saying that, or do you think that, you know, do you think she had a point, or was it just all out, just obliviously just wrong, like she just had no right in saying something like that?
Well, I mean, she's coming from somewhere, of course, but however, at the same time, I don't feel like that was her place to say that in that manner. Instead, I would ask the question, okay, as a black person, what policies are you implementing to make sure that we are doing okay and that we are doing better and that we have progressed? As far as why do we have such a large disparity of this black-white gap of our black students graduating from college and even high school? And even with our young black men, we have so many young black men who aren't graduating from college or who aren't graduating from a Method of High Institute.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that leads to them going to jail, that leads to unemployment, different things like that, crime, and the cycle just continues.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Now, I was looking at a statistic that said black women outdo black men in numbers in colleges, 3 to 1. There are more black women in colleges than there are black men. And that, you know, really that says something, you know, about our society. That says where our true values are as a society. And I believe that as a society we need to come up out of that, because education is detrimental. The reason why Louisiana is in the state that it is in is because of a lack of education. I mean, now we think about it. You know, Louisiana is a place for farming, you know, agriculture, you know, cultivation, things like that. Do you need to read a math book to plant a seed in the ground? Absolutely not. So what that tells me is that the top 10% of the majority of the wealth in Louisiana is being held by these old family farmers for generations upon generations who didn't get rich by reading a book and didn't get rich by learning their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. So why then should they even care about public education in their policy analysis? Why then should they care? Why should they care about public education that has a black face on it when all of their kids, they weren't educated themselves, and all of their kids are going to private schools?
They shouldn't care. And I mean, as we can see now during our legislative sessions, they don't care. Because my big issue with them not caring is because of the fact that I feel we don't care. We need black parents to get out there and say, hey, fund my child's public school. This is what I put you in office for. My child is failing. This school is failing. I'm holding you accountable. You don't want to be held accountable. You don't want to do anything about it. Guess what? Say goodbye to your seat next year.
Wow.
And that's what we need to take a stance, I feel, as black people, and especially as young black people, to make sure that not only are we self-accountable for our own actions and for our own destiny, but we also need to hold those accountable as well, who were voting to sit in these seats and who we are putting in power in order to make these changes so that we can succeed and so that we can have a better place in society.
Absolutely.
Because without this, you know, we're being put at disparity for jobs, and even as far as global innovation, for us to learn more and for us to progress to a level where we can compete globally.
So you're saying that voting is the fine line between political and economic power in this country. Is that what you're saying?
Voting, research, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, because of the fact that there are 13% of African Americans in this country, and we have a small majority of that 13% that is actually a part of the voting population in America, that says a lot about the black individual's voice in this country, politically and economically. And without politics and without money, it's hard to get any circumstantial power, you know, in this country, especially with a capitalistic society. That's why voting is so important, right?
It's very important. In 2008, voting for Barack Obama, it wasn't enough, because what people need to realize is that getting involved on your state and your local level affects you directly. It's not enough just to vote for the president. Yes, that can bring about change. Yes, that can do so much, but Barack Obama isn't the one that's increasing tuition. He isn't the one that's setting the law and the records and the probation fees and the court fees. Yes.
Activism is what is key.
Yes.
So not only just voting, but knowing the issues.
Yes.
And being aware of what is going on in your community. That is what is important. And without doing that, we could never rise as a community out of the state that we are in.
We can't.
I mean, Louisiana in particularly is 22% of Louisiana has a bachelor's degree and below. Only 22%. That leaves roughly over 80% of Louisiana citizens highly uneducated.
And with the current with the current political policies going on right now, especially with the governor cutting grant money for low-income students like me attending Louisiana State University,
or students like me attending Southern University,
can't always afford to continue our education. My parents don't have the money to come out of pocket. They can give me all the support they want at the end of the day, as far as, you know, love, care, passion, advice, but they don't always have the, you know, couple of $1,000s for me to go to college. However, by tuition being raised and grant money for low-income students such as myself being cut, it makes it even harder for us to get into school and to complete the entire 4-year journey of going to college.
Right. You know what? That's a very interesting point, because last legislative session, as well as this legislative session, they passed the GRAD Act.
Yes.
That gives schools the right to increase tuition without legislative approval.
Correct.
What do you think about that?
Might as well be a private school. That's the difference between public school and private school. By allowing this to happen and allowing this act to pass, you're allowing more people, or you're not allowing the government to govern the public schools. Public school is supposed to be governed by a legislative body. That's the point of public school.
Right.
If you don't want you don't feel as if the government should have a hand on your tuition, by all means, go to a private school.
Absolutely.
And by allowing the schools to do this, they're not taking into account other policies that might be going on within the state funding as well. The state's in a deficit right now, $1.6 billion deficit. However, in the state of Louisiana, a lot of people don't know this. In the state of Louisiana, education and healthcare are the only entities that are allowed to be cut from. Other entities are locked into where their budget is not allowed to be touched.
In the Louisiana Constitution.
Yes, in the Louisiana Constitution. And so what happens is, basically, you have students and you have your sick people pretty much paying for the state's deficit to pull the state back up alone. I'm sorry, I'm a 22-year-old student. I don't have the money to pull Louisiana out of the $1.6 billion budget.
But let me get this straight. You just said that Louisiana is in a $1.6 billion deficit, but yet we gave $9.6 billion in tax breaks to our companies, to our oil companies that just blew up a ship, killed a bunch of people, and spilled oil all over our Gulf. And you're telling me that me, a student, and my parents who are unemployed have to pay for this mess? Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm telling you.
Wow.
Exactly what I'm telling you.
Wow.
That's
So you're saying the state budget on top of the national federal deficit is all going to lie in our hands by the time I am 35 years old. That tells me it's going to be very hard to be able to compete nationally and to be very successful as far as revenue and lucration when I'm ready to retire.
And that's if the Chinese doesn't take over by that point.
And that's
they're really the ones
retirement, right?
They're really the ones getting the global jobs. So.
And you know that actually brings me up to another issue, because just like you said, they only cut education and healthcare that is allotted in the Louisiana Constitution that was ratified in 1972. However, they want to go by the Constitution, but yet they only do certain things as according to this Constitution when it is convenient for them. And by them, I mean the I mean the Republican Party. And by the Republican Party, I mean Governor Bobby Jindal. Now, let me tell you a story. One day, Governor Bobby Jindal assigned 15 people to the Louisiana Board of Regents. It is a board commissioned by Louisiana that is designated to dictate the actions and regulations of every single college and university in this state. Now, before January of 2011, the Board of Regents, take it as it may, every single member of the board was lily white. Not a one black individual on that board. But yet, this is a board that represents...
And 2 women? 1 and 2 women?
No, there was 4 women. There was 4 women.
But that's still a disparity.
But that's still a disparity.
Being that the state is 51%.
Being that the Constitution clearly says that the Board of Regents, Article 8, Section 5, AB 1, look this up, kids, clearly states the qualifications for those 15 board members, and it says that those 15 board members must reflect Louisiana's demographic population by race and gender to ensure diversity on the board. But yet, before January of 2011, it was an all-white board. Now, according to the 2010 census, there are 34% of Louisianians are minorities. 32% of Louisianians are black. But yet, 100% of the Louisiana Board of Regents are white. 100%. Now, this is what I want you all to take away from that.
What does that do for me as a black student?
What does that do for me as a black student? Well, considering I go to an HBCU, which I'm sure many of our viewers do, that says a lot about the way Louisiana says about us, about the way Louisiana thinks about us. Because how is an all-white board going to serve as a representation of an all-black college?
But we don't get out and vote.
We don't. And this is why voting is extremely important.
Very much so.
And if I could say anything to anyone out there that's listening to this program right now, voting is a means of life and death. When you take away your right to vote, you take away your right to live.
And I look at it like this. My parents and my aunts have always emphasized the power of voting, because at one point my grandparents weren't allowed to vote. You know, some of your grandparents, aunts, uncles, perhaps even parents didn't have the right to vote. So we must take advantage of it, because of the fact I feel like they tried so hard to keep us from voting. We must accept the fact that voting is power.
That's right.
Because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have tried to hold it from us. So it's something in voting and in our numbers that can change society to benefit us. Remember that.
Remember that. Fear is in the eye of the beholder.